Welcome back to Teaching History in the Homeschool. I'm Heather Schwartz, and I'm here with Scott Powell. We're the creators of Knowable World, a history curriculum for K 2 level homeschoolers, and we're here with more thoughts about how to give your child a great history education at home. Today, we're going to talk about what a good curriculum is. We know it can be really overwhelming and confusing for parents to decide on what to use. So, we want to hopefully give you a little insight into why we think it's a really good idea to use a curriculum for history in particular, and how we think about curriculum as a really important tool for teaching your children.
So, what is a curriculum? The word curriculum comes from Latin, currere, meaning to run, and culum, which refers to the place where athletes would run, the course or track. So, if you think of a track around a stadium where athletes run, that literally is a curriculum. And the extended meaning of the term is a course of action, whatever the action is. In the arena of learning, it's a course of learning, a course of study.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that ties into the classical idea of education being about academic discipline. You're training the mind to work in a certain way. So, school is like the arena where you have training for a mind, just like a runner would train their body.
That's definitely the right comparison. And in both cases, you have to be careful of how you think of the purpose of the training. When you're watching an athlete perform in a competitive sport, it can feel like the race is an end in itself. But the truth is that the purpose of the physical training is the fitness, strength, and dexterity that you gain from athletic training, which transfers over to every physical aspect of your life. Similarly, schooling is not about the metaphorical hoops we have to jump through. It's not about the test scores and the credentials. It's properly about the value of the mental training in the form of knowledge, insight, and thinking skills, which transfer over to every intellectual aspect of your life. The goal is to be mentally equipped to live a better life.
And so a curriculum is a planned sequence of activities that's going to move the student from point A in that training to point B. When they come out on the other side, they're going to have a different understanding, a new level of knowledge, and the ability to engage with the world in a whole different way than when they started out. And of course, you as the parent, you know your child. So you're choosing what curriculum or what level of a curriculum to use based on what point A is for your child. And you want to see them level up from there. So when we're talking about history as a subject, where do we want them to end up?
That is the key question. What should a student have to show for their history education? The goal of all of my teaching is to provide a revelation and explanation of the world we live in. So, for each year of history education, the result is that students better understand the world we live in and how it came to be that way. That's what it means to learn history. That's the goal. And as a parent who is right there with your child and observing them as they grow, you can see your child progressing in their understanding. And of course, there are other things that come along with that, where the student should also be growing every year. Things like the development of historical empathy, which means the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes, historical mindedness, which means the ability to see that the past is not a separate thing, but a vital component of the world unfolding around us. And of course, critical thinking.
Yes, everyone wants to teach critical thinking.
Yes, that is very popular these days. But a problem arises if you try to teach thinking methods divorced from reality based content, i.e., knowledge. A genuine ability to think critically comes from developing a broad base of solid knowledge about reality that logic applies to in a demonstrable way. Those who want to teach critical thinking need to teach subject area curricula that properly orient the child to reality.
Okay. So, in a curriculum, content matters. Another thing that matters is the order that you learn to do things in, or to put it technically, the hierarchy of knowledge. As an example, it's widely understood that you need to learn arithmetic before you can learn algebra. But how does that idea apply to history? Isn't it just a bunch of separate stories?
No, history properly taught is one story. It's the story of how the world we live in came to be the way that it is. It is one world and it has one story. Of course, there are endless numbers of threads and sub stories within that. But the purpose of learning history is to know that one story. So, in telling any part of history, it matters when and how you tell it. You don't have to start from the beginning, but as you tell a story, every new part that you tell builds on what has already been told. You have to know how the whole puzzle fits together in order to do that, which is why history has to be taught by an expert. One thing that this helps avoid is the over reliance on memorization in history education. Real knowledge is so much more than being able to memorize something you've been told. Knowledge means seeing how things connect together and why certain things lead to others. When you teach foundational knowledge first and more complex topics later, that structure is gradually revealed. And the learners get to actually know the sum that is history instead of memorizing fragments, which of course they simply forget in short order.
And with regard to fundamental knowledge, one thing that strikes me is that a child of 4 or 5 actually has a wealth of fundamental knowledge already by the time they begin to learn formally because they've learned so much just through observing and playing and using their senses. And they have so much already that by that age, they're starting to reach beyond what's right in front of them to start asking questions about the world. And we talked about that in a previous episode.
Right. Once a child grasps those fundamentals, they are prepared to grasp ideas that are a level more abstract. Young children move from simply observing that things are a certain way and start asking why. They know they still have so much to learn about the world and they're ready for it, which is why they are ready for history earlier than most people realize.
Yeah, and this is one reason why, as a homeschooling parent, I'm such a big fan of curriculum that's been developed by subject experts. Because it takes expertise to know which ideas are foundational, or how to break down an idea into parts that can be taught separately and then put together at just the right time so that the student is ready to fully understand something new. That's the kind of learning that really does move a student from point A to point B over a course of study.
It is indeed a critical thing to understand, and it isn't taken into account nearly enough in education, including home education. But that is what a good curriculum will do. And the result will be that your child can learn and build real knowledge that isn't just memorization, that isn't going to be forgotten as soon as the test is over, but that is really going to be a lasting part of who they are as a person.
Yes, that's really inspiring. And this is the end of our conversation for today. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be back soon with more thoughts on teaching history in the homeschool.